Hi, this is Kyle Simpson with Simpson Studios. I've been a producer for about 10 years using Cubase and lots of awesome tools and plugins. And got a lot of my bands and friends and all kinds of different people always asking for tips on how to do things. So I thought, be might be time for me to do some tutorial videos and show people how to get started. The first thing I'm going to do is start from the very basics of basics. What you do the very, very first time you open Cubase for the very first time. And I already have Cubase up. I'm running the latest Cubase 8 Pro with the latest updates. If you're running Elements or the Artist Edition or Pro, they're a lot alike, minus a few tools here and there. Most of these tutorials, though, I'm going to be using the basics. Just enough to get you by and get you going. First things first, when you click on Cubase, whether that's in Windows or Mac, it's going to obviously give you the splash screen and load, and then it will actually bring up your Steinberg hub. So I'm going to bring that up. Now, this is also assuming that you have already hooked up all your hardware and you have all your drivers loaded if you needed to install drivers. After all that is ready to go and you're powered on and your hardware is synced up, your interface. Now, if you don't have hardware or an interface, something you can plug a microphone or guitar to, you can use the software ASIO for all, number 4, and then ALL. ASIO number 4 ALL.com, I believe. You can install that software if you need to, but it definitely needs to be running an ASIO, some type of plugin for that, so you can get up and running. But if you have questions on that, I can do a separate tutorial on that. So first things first, obviously, I've got some recents in here from some bands I've been working with, but let's go over to the more area. You'll just see an empty area, an empty template. You've got cool templates if you want to come here and mess with it. Me, I like starting from nothing and then just kind of add my own thing. Another thing you need to be cautious of is you can either use your default location for recording. Pretty much it just kind of sticks everything in a folder. Not necessarily a good thing if you've got different bands coming in and doing different songs. You want to be able to have control over that. By default, I select mine for prompt for project location. So we got an empty one. Let's hit create. And it's going to ask me where I want this folder to be. So it can be anywhere. See, I have a whole hard drive dedicated to my recordings. So you can simply, right now I'm just going to go to the desktop. Make it easy. I'm going to hit new folder and name this test. Hit create. And there it is. It created a folder ready to go. And this makes it nice because when you go back in to do another song, or really if you have another band, you can create another folder. You can keep everything nice and organized. That's going to be your biggest the biggest thing. So when you hit open, obviously there's a whole lot of nothing. So first things first, when you're setting up Cubase, you're going to want to go up here to devices. Don't touch anything else until you do this. You go up to your devices and you go up to go down to device setup. If it's not already highlighted, make sure you click VST audio system. This is the engine. This is the heart that's powering Cubase. ASIO driver. Me, I'm running, it shows my PreSonus, I'm running the Studio Live 1642, but it runs off the Fire Studio engine. So, got that up and running now. Of course, if you have multiple hardware hooked up or multiple software, like this is where you see the ASIO for all or anything like that. Your input-output latency will show you how much latency you're going to have, and I'm going to do a separate video explaining what latency is. A lot of people are confused on that, so I'm going to do a separate video. The main key is that the lower the input latency, the better. Also, the lower the input latency, the more processing it takes for your computer. So you got to make sure you've got a decent computer ready to handle plugins, you know, and lots of tracks at the same time. You know, you got to be ready for that. You could also make sure to activate multiprocessing. It should already be selected. I just like to set my audio priority to boost. I'm not really doing anything else on my computer, at least on here. I mean, this is strictly for recording. I like to keep it boosted. Adjust for record latency. I've had different things happen with this. This is an interesting one. Sometimes this option is extremely useful. Sometimes it's not. And the reason I say that is because sometimes it'll actually cause a slight few millisecond recording delay when you zoom in and look at your track and you know you hit something right on time. It's actually a few milliseconds off, even though you know you recorded it on time. Come to find out they're all off. You click this button and then all of a sudden they're all on. So if you are recording a track and you just know, it's like I was spot on the money, and you go on there and you look and every single one of them is paced evenly, just a little off the line all the way across, you might want to come in here and click either check or uncheck this button and try it again and see if it makes a difference. Normally for me, especially if you have your input latency, that will affect it too, but if you're keeping it under 8 milliseconds, you shouldn't see a difference. But this little guy right here has made a huge difference for me in the past, and I have to just kind of, you know, take a guitar and turn on the metronome and just kind of hit a, you know, tap a string on the guitar, beep, 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 over and over, and make sure that that is just dead on. And it's weird, I guess it just depends on the computer, because I've had different computers need it on and different ones need it off. So for me, on mine, I needed it on. So we're good on that. Now, this is where you'll see all your inputs and outputs if you need to go here. For the Mac, this is where your control panel is going to be to change your buffer size, your latency size. When I'm recording when I, you know, drums or guitar, vocals, anything, I will usually set this about 128 just because my computer can handle it. And see, that brings me down to 5 milliseconds. I mean, the human ear can't even hear the difference on that delay. If I'm mixing and mastering and I've done all of my, you know, all of my recording and there's not going to be any delays, I'll jump this bad boy up, you know, 1024, and see, that brings me way up to 24 milliseconds. You can't even record at that high. I'll keep it low for now. Otherwise, you shouldn't need anything else. You might want to come in here, check your, you know, make sure your MIDI, if you've got any MIDI controllers hooked up, make sure all that is set to go. Everything is active, hit OK. So now, and all this, you should be able to tell up here your recording format, everything. Usually it's pretty good of letting you know if something's wrong or not configured. They'll usually, like, I believe it's orange, that it'll glow to let you know, hey, there's something wrong. The second thing you need to do is go to Devices, VST Connections, or F4. VST Connections is where you will define your inputs and outputs of what your hardware can do. Now, let's just assume that you have some type of multi-track interface. Like for me, the Studio Live has 16 inputs. Right now, this is just it just tries to make assumptions and it doesn't do a very good job. Now, you have multiple ways. I have my preset, and I'm going to show you right now. So this isn't right. So I'm gonna remove this. And then I'm going to hit Add Bus. We're always going to want to make sure these are mono. And for me, let's bring it up to 16 channels of inputs. Now, Cubase is smart enough, when you hit Add, there it is, 1 through 16. It figured it all out. So, from here, I find it a little irritating with Cubase. When you start up a new project, a lot of times it's kind of finicky. Sometimes the inputs will be here when you start up a new project. Sometimes they're not. Just like earlier, it only said like channel 1 and channel 18. I was just on Cubase earlier and it did not say that. So let's make a preset, which is this little guy right here, where you can store it. And you type in, for me, I typed in Studio Live and hit OK. So now when I come along on here and I see that, all I have to do is just click Studio Live. Bam, there it is. Same with outputs. Things are a little goofy. Now I've got certain outputs that are set. You'll be able to know if you remove. Uh-oh. Okay. Found out what happened. I'm running a dual screen and this little option shot all the way over to the other screen, so I apologize for that. Okay, it's doing the same thing. It's asking, obviously this is your output, so you're going to want an output stereo left and right. Not really need to name it, and hit add. Again, for me, now if you're running a 2-channel interface, it kind of freaks out. So I'm sorry, if you're running a 2-channel interface, it'll automatically just find the only left and right output. For me though, so I have 18 different outputs, so I already stored mine. Studio Live, those are my outputs. Now right here is your click. So if you're just running a left and right output, just click the little click, because if you don't do this, you're not going to have a metronome. You have to make sure that it says click. Now for me, I've got my click on a separate track, so I'm going to stick that right there. So now you've got your inputs figured out, and you stored them as a preset, so they're always there. Now again, with a 2-channel interface, it normally does it pretty well automatically, but it's always worth just jumping to the VST connections real quick and making sure that it says left and right, or 1 through 16 or 1 through 48 or however many you have. Same with your outputs. Got to make sure everything's set. And again, see, you can set a preset for it, so you've got everything set up within just a few seconds. So that is your basic setup of Cubase ready to record. Now the last thing I'm going to show you, head on over to Project Setup. With Project Setup, you really don't have to do a lot, but the most important part is finding out what your sample rate, what you want to record at. Sample rate you can do, now the standard by default, if you're opening Cubase for the first time, you're going to be at 44.1, which is standard CD quality. I personally and most studios like to record at 48, if not 96. My hardware here with the Studio Live only supports up to 48, unfortunately. But you know, Nashville, a lot of Nashville studios, and even people with some bigger budget studios will record at 96. But you gotta definitely have kind of a horsepower computer to you gotta have a beast to be running everything at 96. But 48 is a great one to have. It's not that much more processing. All it's going to do is better your sound, better your overall recording quality, and I would highly suggest going ahead and jumping up to here. Now the good thing, after you select 48, 24 is okay, or you can select 32. I wouldn't use 16. It's the same thing. The higher the number, the better the quality. But remember up here, I mean, there's only so much the human ear can hear on the difference. I just say 24-bit. Everything else can stay the same, just like this, and hit OK. Now, the cool thing is from here on out, by default, when you start up a new project, it should always say 48 kilohertz, 24-bit. Should always stay the same after you set that first project. Now, if you do one project and you move it down to 44.1, then be careful, because I've made mistakes of doing that before and jumping to another band, and I meant for them to be at 48 and they weren't. So just be careful of everything you've got going on, especially when you're starting up a project for the first time. But we'll just do a quick review. Devices, device setup, VST audio system. Make sure your hardware is selected. Go down to your actual hardware title. Go to your control panel. Make sure that your buffer size is a good spot, so your recording will be instant. You won't be having any kind of weird delays, long delays, that latency. And then go to your VST connections. Make sure your inputs and outputs are selected. And then just double check and make sure your recording format, again in Project, Project setup. Make sure you're set at 48. And that'll wrap it up for the very beginning tutorial of Cubase.